Hello, this vlog is going to be about feminism and about gender roles within society, kind of like where they come from, the purpose of them, how they're changing, and perhaps the detrimental effect that they're having on people in society. So if we think about gender roles and we think about kind of what is stereotypically female, what is stereotypically male, it goes right back to prehistoric times. You know, it made sense for women to stay at home with the children because they're the ones that bore them. You know, if they went out hunting while they were pregnant, they were probably going to lose the baby, they were probably going to die, they were slower, they'd get eaten, you know, that kind of thing. It made more sense for them to stay at home. It made more sense for the men to do the role of going to get the food and whatever. So we've got gender roles which have a purpose, like they are there, they make sense, society works because of them. And because society's changed over time, the roles have kind of stayed the same, even though they don't necessarily need to. You know, in kind of like, I'm trying to think, like medieval, maybe after medieval, like kind of Elizabethan, Victorian kind of times, women were still seen as property of men. You know, women belonged to the father. They would then be used as kind of, what's the word? Political pawns, if you will, or ways of kind of boosting the family name in order to kind of integrate certain families together and share wealth and things like that. Women had that purpose to benefit the men. Again, a role that they had, so they would get looked after, they could stay at home, they could, you know, learn to do things like knit and, well, sewing, and things like that, whereas obviously men would go out and do the business and work and stuff. So again, there was roles there for each of them. But women not slowly, I guess, well, yeah, I guess slowly, or I don't even know, like, were women always disadvantaged? Like, women were probably quite happy to be at home and looked after. You know, who wouldn't want to be looked after by somebody and have somebody else go out and stress at work? Like, that's a great life, isn't it? Women have a great life if that is kind of, you know, they can do whatever they want as long as they follow a few rules. But then I guess it's a double-edged sword, isn't it? Because with that, you have no rights and you have no ability to vote. You have, you know, you can't get finance, you can't be independent, you can't do anything that you want to do. You know, when your freedom is taken away from you, you realise how much you actually want it. You realise that, you know, when you haven't got any independence, that's the one thing that you really want. And it kind of, I'm not surprised that people that are suffragettes did, you know, crazy things to get a vote, because it was symbolic of the fact that just because you are born a woman doesn't mean that you should be disadvantaged and that you should not be able to do what it is that you want to do. So it sounds like someone's breaking into my garden. So I was slightly distracted by that. What was I saying? So because of I mean, really, when you think about it, the reason why society now has this kind of structure of women becoming a bit more empowered is because of the war. You know, the war was a horrendous, horrific thing, but it was very good for women in the sense that when all the men had to go to war, again, another sexist thing, like, women were very lucky that they didn't have to go to war. Like, because of their gender, it's a bit of positive discrimination, isn't it? They didn't have to go to war. And all the men had to go and die, basically, because most of the time, they were strategically put into situations where they were going to die, but it would benefit the overall kind of winning of the war. So, you know, women had to stay at home, and they had to step up. They had to go into the jobs that they'd been denied for years, that they weren't allowed to do because they were men's jobs. So they realised that actually they could do those jobs, and there was no reason why their gender would prevent them from doing that. It's almost like somebody needed to show them and say to them, like, there's really definitely something in the back of my garden. So because of the war, you've got all these women finally realising that just because they've been born a woman doesn't mean that they can't do certain jobs. I mean, I don't even know if it... Would every woman have thought like that? You know, maybe some women were like, well, you know, I can stay at home and I can spend my time with my children and I can bring them up and I don't have to go to work. Like, who would want to choose to go to work over staying at home and bringing up their children? Like, I think it's such a shame that men over the years have missed out on seeing their children grow up because of gender stereotypes, because they've not, you know, it's not been the right thing to do to stay at home with your children. Like, I think it's so odd that you wouldn't want to stay at home with your children. Wouldn't anybody want to do that? I mean, I know children can be a handful. It can be like, you know, you just want to go to work for a break. Like, I get that too. But that should be, like, available to both sexes. You know, men and women should have the opportunity to work part-time and do it together. Surely that makes more sense. You get the best of both worlds then. So, you know, these gender stereotypes, like, why have we got them? Why are they still here? I was shopping in Tesco's one day and I went down the aisles and there's this little boy and he was like looking at toys on the shelf and he picked one up and he was playing with it. And his dad turned around to him and said, "Oh, you don't want to play with that? That's for girls. That's not a boy's toy." And I was just like, what? Like, what makes something a boy's toy or a girl's toy? Why a toy? Like, I teach about how adverts target children in a kind of stereotypically male sense and a stereotypically female sense. So gender stereotypes were reinforced by these advertisements. And like the girl adverts are all like, they talk in a really high voice, they're really chatty, talking all the time, gossipy, kind of, oh, look what we're doing, look what we're doing. It's all pink and it's all kind of like, oh, I'm so dumb. Like, literally that's what it is. And then for the boys, it's like they talk like this, and they're very strong, and they use words like leader. And it's just like, what is that? Like, why are cars aimed at boys? Why can't a girl like to drive a fast car? Like, I love driving. I mean, I drive at the speed limit, but I mean, like, if I was on a racetrack, I would love to drive really fast. Like, I would love to have a race car experience. That would be awesome. And I know lots of other girls that would like that too. And I know guys that definitely wouldn't like that. Like, is it really a gender thing? I always remember when I was younger being really, really jealous of my brother and the toys that he was bought. Like, he had awesome toys. Like, he had these little plastic things that you would connect together called connects, and you'd build like a big Ferris wheel and it would like go around, and it was awesome. And he had like Meccano that was like pretty much the similar kind of thing, like with metal, and you'd have nuts and bolts and you build like a car with it or whatever. Like, the closest I got to that was Lego. Like, I had a Lego set that you could build into a sheriff's like outpost, like, you know, imagine like a western kind of sheriff's outpost, and it was awesome. And I used to put it together and take it down and put it together like numerous times because I loved it so much. Like, I love putting things together and building things, and to this day I love things like flat pack furniture. Like, that's my dream. Like, give me some flat pack furniture and I will just be in my element. I will love it. But that's a classically boys thing to do. You know, maybe that is why men are more likely to do the DIY, because the toys that they get bought are to do with putting stuff together, following instructions and putting stuff together. Like, they've got that kind of down from childhood. You know, I remember as a kid asking for things, and obviously my parents would buy them me. But if I hadn't have asked for them, then I probably would have been given the stereotypical toys. You know, I had a lot of dolls and I had a lot of kind of Barbies and the odd Ken. I never had an Action Man. Like, why didn't I have an Action Man? Like, why was that? Why is that a boy's toy? Because an Action Man is the same as a Ken doll, but the Ken doll looks very feminine, whereas the Action Man looks very manly. Like, what is that? Even things like jaw structure and body structure are completely different in the two dolls, and the way that they're dressed. You know, my Ken doll had blue shoes. What guy wears blue shoes? Blue loafers they wear as well. Like, what? Like, you know, and my Paul doll had pink shoes of the same kind. Pink. You know, what? Like, what is that? You know, all my Barbies were pink. My Cindy was pink. They had pink shoes. Like, I actually hate the colour pink just because of the connotations that that's a girl's colour, and it really, really kind of like it grates on me when, not grates, like jars me when I see little girls dressed in like pink and like flowers and like everything that's stereotypically girly, and then boys are dressed in like robots or animals and it's blue, and it's like, oh, like, and the way that the way that children play and get reinforced for their play behaviour reinforces these gender stereotypes anymore. You know, if a little boy cries, or you know, a younger boy cries, he's a wuss. You know, he can't express his emotions. He has to be a man. He has to man up. If a girl is assertive and kind of, you know, tries to lead people, she's called bossy. You know, you don't get a bossy boy, you get a bossy girl though. You know, the boy's a leader, the girl is bossy. You know, there's constantly these kind of differences between genders where if you don't conform to these gender stereotypes, there's something wrong with you, that you have to fit in these boxes. And people aren't like that. And it's great in society now where there's this movement of women being empowered and kind of, you know, being more independent. You know, a lot of the Disney films initially were damsel in distress. They needed saving by a prince. They needed kind of, you know, you've got this thing, I can't remember exactly what it's called, it's some psychological measure, and you can see how kind of feminist the film is. Now, when I talk about feminism, I'm talking about equal rights between genders. I think a lot of people get confused about what feminism actually is because there's different branches of it. But the general kind of consensus on feminism is that it means that genders, you know, being of a certain gender does not impact on how you should be treated. You should be labelled as a gender and then therefore your behaviour is interpreted in like that label. That's discrimination, that's prejudice. If you're not a feminist, whether you're a guy or a girl, then you are discriminated and you are being prejudiced. It's like everybody should be a feminist. Everyone should believe in equal rights for genders. Like, why would you want to discriminate against genders, positively or negatively? Because positive discrimination goes on all the time, and I don't agree with that either. Like, no discrimination is okay, whether it's positive or not. You know, if it's how it, like, for example, like, women get a lot of positives out of being women. You know, they get doors held open for them. They get, you know, just said, oh, you can go first. Like, it's lovely, and it's gentlemanly. But why don't women do it for men? Why don't women, you know, hold doors open for men? It's a human thing. It's a nice thing to do. Hold the door open for somebody, regardless of what gender they are. That shouldn't determine it. You know, let someone go in front of you because you're just letting someone go in front of you, not because they're a woman or because you're a man. Or either way around. You know what I mean? Like, think about, why are you doing what you're doing? Are you doing it because you've been taught it's a gentlemanly thing to do, or are you being taught because it's a nice thing to do for somebody, so therefore do it for everybody? You know, going back to that measure in Disney films, things like women don't initiate conversations. Women only respond to a man that's initiated the conversation. So we're basically conditioning our children, our girls, to believe that you speak only when spoken to. You only give an opinion if it's been initiated by a man. You have to be saved by a man. You're actually a victim, and you need somebody to direct you and tell you what to do. If your dad's not there, then your husband will tell you. That you have to get married and you have to live happily ever after. You have to have children. Like, that's the structure of your life. That's what you have to do. That you have to make sacrifices in order to get, you know, true love and all that kind of stuff. That you are kind of chosen not because of who you are as a person and your personality traits, but because of what function you are almost. Like, you are a woman and they need a woman, so you're kind of ideal for them. I mean, now they've kind of got Frozen, and I love Frozen because it's got Anna in it, and she's very real, and she's very like that. She's like me. Like, she has been based on me. I mean, she hasn't, but like she resonates with me a lot because I am ridiculously like her. And the guy in it is kind of like, yeah, that's the kind of guy that I would go for, because he's very grounding, he's very down to earth, and he's very kind of like simmers down her craziness, which we all need. So it kind of showed like this kind of thing about, you know, you don't have to, you know, when you meet somebody, you're not going to fall in love with them straight away. Like, that's not normal. That's a bit kind of like when the person has issues, when they fall in love with you straight away, when they're possessive and controlling. Like, that's not normal. I think a lot of the problems in our society around relationships it's come from childhood. It's the conditioning that you're going to meet someone and fall in love with them, and then it's quite normal for you to only spend your time with that person. I mean, that's healthy, because, you know, that's very odd. But even still, in the Frozen, they've analysed it with this measure, and still there's not a lot of conversation that's initiated by the female. It's generally initiated by the man still. There's if you analyse the proportion, the percentage of speech by male characters and by female characters, there's more for male than there is for female. You know, going back to the adverts, a lot of narration over adverts in children's TV programmes is a male voice. What is that telling our children? You know, that cognitively they're not thinking about it. They're not thinking, oh, this voice is, you know, whatever. But the connotations from it, the kind of subliminal messages that you're getting from it, is that a male voice is more important, that a male speaking is more important. Now, that is being addressed by this movement of women kind of coming forward, being empowered or whatever, but still, it's kind of flipping the other way. It's almost like women are trying to have a matriarchal society. They're trying to kind of like be better than men. Like, I was watching an episode of The Apprentice recently, and I was horrified by what I was actually seeing. The women on there were constantly talking about how it's going to be like an all-girl final, that girls, like, it was the episode where they were in a taxi and they were saying the women wear the trousers and the women are better than the men. And it's like, why are you saying you are better than somebody else because of their gender? Like, why is that? Why is that even a thing? Like, that is not okay. And they were interviewing models to take part in an advert, and they were like ogling at them, they were objectifying them, they were saying, oh, let's look up underneath your top. And it was like, what are you doing? Like, that is not okay. And it's on BBC One, and that's being portrayed to everybody in society that it's okay for women to behave like that against men. It's not. If that was the other way around and it was a man doing it to a woman, there would be uproar. Everyone would be like, what are they doing? But yet they don't seem to recognise it when it's the other way around and it's men that's being objectified and discriminated against. Like, neither is okay. So why is that acceptable? You know, it's like, you know, the women are rising up and saying kind of, you know, they're going to be empowered. Again, it's not giving a good role model to our children. It's suggesting that all women need to be assertive, all women need to be kind of empowered, they need to be driven, they need to be ambitious, that they need to be like that. So you've got two extremes, and neither of them are a really good, you know, kind of blueprint for children to follow. I mean, it's giving them more than one option, so that's great, but still, it's still not great. And I kind of worry about what it's doing to men in our society, because, you know, women are kind of understanding now that they can be both. They can be very feminine and very kind of warm and nurturing, but they can also be assertive and they can be independent and driven. They've kind of got that balance now, or they're becoming that balance. They're accepting, you know, the polarisation of their personalities. They're not kind of denying half of their personality because it doesn't fit in a gender stereotype. But I worry for men, because men are not there yet. They're not kind of, I guess, as vocal yet about how they feel, about how for years they've held their emotions in, how they don't really talk to people, how it's not considered manly to express when they're feeling upset, when they have an issue. They bottle all their emotions up. And obviously I'm speaking very stereotypically because this is not all men at all. You know, I know some men that are very vocal about how they're feeling, and I love those men because that kind of, you know, I admire that they have that strength to do that, because in our society that's not accepted. You know, you're as a child you're kind of called a wuss. Like, what is that? Like, it's okay for a woman to talk about her feelings, but it's not okay for a man. Like, where does that come from? We are all human beings. You need to express how you're feeling, otherwise it's not going to go away. It's going to stay there with you for a really long time until you kind of recognise that about yourself. You know, the suicide rate for men is so much higher than for females, and it's probably because they don't talk about things. You know, a guy would commit suicide and the family would be like, we've got no idea why they did it, because there was no signs. They didn't express anything, they didn't get help, they didn't kind of like say anything about it. Like, that is horrific, that a man doesn't feel like they can do that they can't speak about it because they're stuck in this gender stereotypical box. Like, that's not okay. You know, we're teaching our boys that, you know, you have to be predatory and you have to kind of get a woman and you have to kind of be aggressive to do it. Like, we're teaching our boys that it's not okay to be sensitive and it's not okay to be kind of thoughtful about things. Like, and in that way, you know, something was said today about men are becoming extinct because of the Y chromosome getting shorter. And one of the girls turned around and was like, yeah. And I was just like, are you for real? Like, why do you think it's okay to kind of put men down and think that men are what's the word? Obsolete? Like, they're not. Like, I'd be very unhappy if there were no men left in the world. Like, I have really good relationships with men as well as I do with women because we're all human beings. Like, why would your gender determine on whether you should be considered useful to society? Like, why do women think that they don't need men? Yes, you do. Yes, you do. You do need men. And I think as well, like, you have brothers and you have fathers and, you know, husbands and friends. Why are we, you know, and for men, like, you have sisters, you have mothers, you have girlfriends, you have friends. Why are we not equal? Why do you not view each other as equal? Like, why is that? Why are we still kind of, you know, discriminating in that kind of way? I find it really strange, and I think anyone that doesn't call people up on the language that we use and the way that we kind of condition people, the way that we respond to others in terms of how they're behaving, needs to change, because our society is not going down a good path right now. I think it's kind of like this shitstorm that's happened and we're waiting for the dust to settle. And women are kind of thinking they're better and men are kind of, you know, men are feeling like they have no place anymore, like they have no role anymore. You've taken that role away from them because you've taken it on yourself. Women are now like, oh, I don't need any help. I don't need anyone to be there for me. Like, I'm totally fine on my own. What are men's purpose then? What are they there for? Like, you can't just reject a gender stereotype and a role and not give them something else to replace it with. You know, there needs to be more done in the male area to kind of recognise that everybody, every human being is on a spectrum of feminine traits and male traits, and that no one side of that spectrum is correct. It's gender, it's been enforced on you. It shouldn't matter whereabouts you are on it. It shouldn't matter what your traits are or whatever. Everyone should be accepted for being a human being. And so I don't really understand why we have them anymore.